Let us do a quick recap of what all or none or black and white thinking is. This is where we see things in extremes. Situations and people are either all good or all bad. We are unable to see shades of grey. If things are not perfect, they are as good as nothing. Examples: I did not get into the first 100 ranks in the IIT JEE exam. That means I have failed. Or, if my wedding does not happen in a farmhouse, it is not a wedding. Let us try to understand this a bit more with a story. Jay is on his way to work. He has been feeling on top of the world these past few days as he has been doing well at work. Last week, his boss actually said it's the best work he has ever seen. He felt like he was on cloud 9. His mood has been great. Some things which would typically bother him, he has been ignoring. Nothing could affect his mood now. He picks up a coffee and heads into the office. He is meeting some colleagues and chatting with some friends when his boss calls him into his office. The boss says that his last submission was good, but requires some minor changes. How do you think Jay felt at this moment? Happy, as the boss said the submission was great? Happy, but also a little concerned about the changes? Or upset, as the boss suggested changes? Now Jay, despite being in a cheerful mood, feels upset that the boss suggested some changes. He starts to think that he had failed this project because it wasn't perfect. The high he was riding on had ended. His happiness came crashing down, and he couldn't stop thinking about how he failed, and his great work streak ended. For Jay, it was difficult to take feedback. He felt it meant that he was not good enough. He went quickly back to his desk to make the changes and submitted the work again. Now here, do you feel Jay's thinking pattern is black and white, among others? Yes or no? After submitting his work, he begins to think about how he is feeling. He feels sad and upset. What is the most effective strategy forward for Jay right now? Ignore the negative experience of the feedback and just distract himself with something else? Try to keep a balanced view and generate alternative thoughts and perspectives? Or react to the negative experience and resolve by thinking of ways he can ensure perfection in the future, so he never has to go through this again? But let's take a moment to think about why is black and white thinking unhelpful. Since nobody and no situation is perfect, a person with black and white thinking will end up falling into the negative thinking traps very often, as they are unable to accept both good and bad in a person or a situation. When someone has such strict rules of failure and success, they are setting themselves up for failure. So in the same situation as Jay's, what could be some helpful alternate thoughts? Let us look at some here. My boss said the work was good and suggested some minor changes. That does not mean I have failed. I'm still doing well. My boss is still happy with my work. My boss liked the work I did. The suggested changes were just a different perspective and probably what the client required. It does not mean my work is a failure. Or, my work was not perfect, and I am happy to improve. Now can you try and generate some helpful alternate thoughts for Jay as well? How do we generate these helpful alternative thoughts for black and white thinking? Work on the unhelpful thinking pattern. Take out the thought diary and note down the situation and corresponding thoughts, feelings, behaviors. Identify the problematic thoughts and feelings that cause us to react. Recognize the ones that indicate the distortion, black and white thinking. Write these thoughts, feelings, and behaviors down somewhere. For example, Jay's thought, my boss says my work is good, but is asking me to make some changes. That means I have failed, is indicative of a distortion. Also note how you feel in the moment, like in the story Jay feels, sad and upset. Once we have identified the distortion, we can move on to the next step, finding the evidence behind those thoughts or beliefs. Finding the truth. Where is the evidence? Ask yourself this question. Where is the evidence that these thoughts are true? Every being in the universe is a work in progress, and there is always scope for improvement. Jay's thought, I have failed, may actually not be true, and could be coming from a faulty understanding of what it means to do a good job. Work changes can be required due to different scenarios and situations, like a business need or a client need. It may be erroneous to think, I am a failure if changes are being requested for your work. Such thoughts could be coming from some deep negative beliefs that we have been living with, like, I am not capable. Hence, we have to start by finding the truth in our thoughts, evidence that our perspective is not faulty. Developing a whole perspective, good and bad. Sometimes your assumptions or beliefs may not be completely faulty, and there may be some truth there. For example, the thought, I have failed, may be arising from some memories and beliefs around previous failures. Maybe I failed in school in class 10th, and I have not forgotten it. But is that all that is there? What about all the other successes? In this case, the boss even said, it's the best work she has ever seen. She also said, the submission was good and needs some minor changes. Only minor changes. But you just refuse to acknowledge those positive experiences and pieces of evidence. The reality is that there is both good and bad in a situation, and there is always some room for improvement. This is how we can make a shift from an extreme perspective, I have failed, to a balanced and whole perspective. I have done well and only need to make some minor changes. Now that I have these new helpful thoughts, I can feel and act from a place of balance. The challenge of negative emotions. Sometimes when we are feeling low, it may be difficult to generate such alternate thoughts. The mind may just refuse to believe in them. When it is like that, you can include some breathing exercises or concentration practice for a few minutes, so your mind settles down a bit and is open to acknowledging these alternate realities. Perfectionism, success, and failure. Wanting our work to be perfect or wanting to be perfect are extreme views that are not based on how the world really works. Therefore, this thinking is bound to bring misery. The whole world is a work in progress, and so we are. There is both good and bad, light and dark, yin and yang in the universe. Defining ourselves by moments of successes and failures can only make us more reactive and fearful, and limit our capabilities in turn. Instead, we should see them as journey points in our life paths that we can simply learn from. We need to accept ourselves as whole, not just black or white.